Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you your fight picks for UFC Singapore, where Demian Maia will be taking on Funky Ben Askren in what will be an amazing contest, an interesting contest. Partially interesting for me because I feel like this fight is uncrunchable. Ben Askren has had two funky endings to his last fights, right? He won the fight against Robbie Lawler that I think he could have potentially lost pretty easily, and then obviously the flying knee from Masvidal. He doesn't throw a single punch or do anything. I guess an attempted takedown, technically, if you want to count it that way. So that fight, I honestly feel, is uncrunchable, and I'll make a pick, but it's just going to be my idea of who I think is going to win. There's no numbers behind this at all, so I'm not counting it officially on our win-loss record for the metric, but it's something I am going to talk about. And before we get into that, though, I do have a shout-out to give here. So through some happenstance on Reddit, I had been speaking with other guys that run a podcast, something definitely much different than we do here. They talk about Magic the Gathering, the card game, on the MMMTG podcast. I'll post a link in the description down below so you guys can link to it if you like. If you happen to be a listener and you like Magic the Gathering, I listen to the show, seem pretty knowledgeable. In the latest episode, they're reviewing something called the ELD set, so I guess there's a new Magic the Gathering set out. I haven't played myself in several, almost 2 decades now. Yeah, I'm getting old, I guess. But yeah, go please check those guys out. Their description will be down below. But without further ado, let's get into it. Here's the show. Alright, so let's get into our main event. I have a majority of the fights crunched here, but I do not have this main event. And the reason being, as I said earlier, Funky Ben Askren has just had too many funky finishes inside of the UFC. Yes, was he an amazing fighter at one? Absolutely. Has he looked that good in any of his UFC fights? Not really, not to speak of. His win, I almost said loss, his win over Robbie Lawler was one that he got picked up in the air, slammed on his head, and I thought Robbie had him dead to rights until the Bulldog choke. It was very flash ending, and then of course, speaking of flash endings, one of the fastest knockouts, maybe the fastest in the UFC history, we had George Masvidal just nail a flying knee against Askren, and this is just not enough data in the UFC, I think, to come up with competent numbers. All that being said, I'm going to pick the funky one to win. So Demian Maia, he's an amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. This guy has 13 submissions over his 27 wins. We've seen him basically choke everyone out up until recently. So when he climbed the ladder, he got to fight the mountain Tyron Woodley. What do we see? Stuffed takedowns. Colby Covington, again, his boxing not good enough. Could not score many takedowns. Kamaru Usman the same. Here's a guy that when he goes up against competent wrestlers, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, all wrestling bases, cannot pick up a victory. Ben Askren, what does he have? The wrestling base. I don't think that Demian Maia is going to be able to exploit his game plan against a guy with wrestling as high as Ben Askren's. I think he's going to run into trouble. Does it mean that he, couldn't get ahead in a scramble? No, he absolutely still could take the back of Ben Askren. But as a control wrestler, I think Ben Askren is going to have the advantage. Also, I think from what we've seen in his 1FC fighting, also his Rufus Sport camp, Ben Askren, I think, is a better overall striker than Demian Maia. I think that he is a high level, he's a above average level striker with top tier wrestling. Now, granted, we haven't really seen it on display so much at this point in the UFC, but that is his claim to fame right now, and I think that he's going to be able to come back and pick up a win against Maia. Now, just from an excitement standpoint, I can't wait to see how this thing plays out. Does Maia, work a good guard game? Is he trying to go for takedowns himself? Is he going to be able to stuff the takedowns of Askren? Do these guys choose to box it out to start the fight? This is a very interesting how could it go type scenario. Either way, though, I ultimately think that Askren is going to get it done here. This is not a metric pick. This is just my own personal belief. I like Ben Askren in this one. I like Demian Maia a lot, too. I just don't think he's performed well enough against wrestlers to pick up a win. So, in the main event, I am picking Ben Askren. All right, this moves us on to our co-main event where we have at lightweight Michael the Menace Johnson taking on Stephen Braveheart Ray, or Stevie Ray. And this is an interesting fight. Both of these guys coming off of losses via KO, and they both have very good hands as well. These guys have 8 KOs for Johnson and 6 for Stevie Ray. However, Stevie Ray has proven himself to be more competent on the mat. He's proven himself to be, I think, a slightly more well-rounded fighter, and even though the numbers don't always speak to that, the guy has sparse victories. We know that Michael Johnson has been on the decline recently, right? He hasn't really picked up a really good win since against Dustin Poirier, and even that was kind of by surprise, right? Lost to Beneil Dariush, Nate Diaz, Khabib, Gaethje, the list goes on and on. Even Josh Emmett in his last outing, and I don't think he's going to be able to pick up a win here. I think the guy is just on the slide. Now, with all that being said, he is the kind of guy that can surprise. He does hit hard. With his win over Dustin Poirier, he clipped him. With Khabib, we think he hurt him early on in that fight before he was taken and pounded to dust. Michael Johnson has the ability to create upsets, and he can definitely hit a guy and put them on the mat, but I think that Stevie Ray has the competency to beat a guy like him. Granted, he has lost to Paul Felder, he has lost to Leonardo Santos, so in a lot of ways, I gotta say, how is this a co-main event, to be perfectly honest? But these guys are both really good fighters. I just believe that based on the numbers, Stevie Ray is a slightly better fighter. In all honesty, though, I could see this one really going either way. Michael Johnson has that knockout upset ability. It's just that if Stevie Ray can exploit some kind of ground game, maybe get a guillotine, rear naked choke, something, he's going to be able to pick up a victory here. I just wouldn't want to get into a brawling contest with Michael Johnson because sometimes he does come out on top, and it can be dangerous to fight with him or trade with him. So in this co-main event, we are picking Braveheart Stevie Ray. All right, my next fight is down the middle from the metric perspective. It's Frank the Crank Camacho, a guy that I really like to watch fight, taking on Beneil Dariush. So this one is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, Beneil Dariush. The guy seems to have found his stride again. We all thought that he was on the decline, right? Lost Edson Barboza. Draw to Evan Dunham, lost to Alex Hernandez, right? Knockout in the first round, not a good look. We're like, is this guy going to be able to hang? He's got a lot of potential, especially coming into that Barboza fight. Good win over James Vick before he lost his chin, win over Michael Johnson himself, and he recently kind of got it back. Win over Thiago Moises, win over Drew Dober via armbar. The guy looks like he's on the upswing. Now, let's look over Frank the Crank. Similar kind of story. Guy that came into the UFC, took a loss early on, got back on track with a split decision victory with Damian Brown, and then hit the skids again. Jeff Neal KO loss. Drew Dober loses to him, a guy that recently Beneil Dariush beat in his last outing. And then he comes back in a amazing fashion, right? A very high IQ, skilled fashion, where he defeated Nick Hine. A guy that is tough as hell. But Frank chipped away at him, and he chipped away at him with really competent boxing, and he ground him down to dust. And I think he might be able to do the same thing here. The guy hits well. He has 17 KOs over his 22 wins. He has 2 submissions. And when I look over at Dariush, he doesn't have a great array of knockouts. He's 3 KOs over his 16 wins and 7 submission victories. The guy, primarily, if he can't get it to mat, needs to get to the decision. And I think Camacho's ability to finish a fight is going to come out here. I think he's going to be able to put it on Dariush early, who has sometimes a hard time starting. We have seen Dariush, lose early on. Look at his loss to Chiesa, Barboza, and Alex Hernandez. That was either second or first rounds. Most of his other victories have been via decision. And I don't know if he's going to be able to get to the end of the line where he can pick up a potential victory over Camacho. I think Camacho puts it on early, gets the leg kicks going, starts setting up the jab, working through the combinations, and just shuts down a guy that takes a little while to find his rhythm and tread water. I think that ultimately Frank the Crank Camacho gets it done in Singapore. He's our pick. All right, this next one has got to be the lock of the night. We got Cyril Gain taking on Don'Tale Mayes. And this is, I think, a tale of a guy that is going to be an amazing heavyweight fighter if he stays on the trajectory and looks as amazing as he did. So Cyril Gain is an amazing French kickboxer that recently came into the UFC and picked up a submission via arm triangle early on against Rafael Pessoa. And before that, he was just knocking guys out, choking them out. He looks too hot to handle right now at this heavyweight division. Don'Tale Mayes, nothing against the guy. I just don't think from where he was in the Dana White Contender Series, knocking guys out at that level, is going to be able to hang with a guy that has a phenomenal kickboxing record. In kickboxing, he was 12-0 with 7 KOs in Muay Thai, and I think that's going to be more than Don'Tale can hang with. Don'Tale's a fairly green fighter himself. He's only 6-2, and I do not believe he has the same level of experience outside of MMA, especially being a guy that wants to get knockouts. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't knock him out. These are heavyweights. These guys swing hard. The ability to put a guy out for either party is always there. But I think Cyril Gain has seen competition better than him and knocked all of them out, or at least gotten wins through the decision. So I don't see Cyril Gain losing here. I think his skill set, his bag of tools is going to be greater. We know that he even has a ground game, which Don'Tale does not. So I think when you look at the full encompassing aspects of MMA, we have to give it to Cyril. He's honestly my lock of the night. We're going to pick Cyril Gain in this contest. In our next one at welterweight, we have Muslim King of Kung Fu Salikov taking on Loreno El Matador Staropoli. Loreno Staropoli, the guy has a fight name, the Matador, but it's just a fun name to say. This Argentinian fighter has a great name, Loreno Staropoli. It's just the bee's knees, I gotta say. I love it. It's fun to say. Anyways, let's talk about who I think is going to win. And I think that's actually going to be Staropoli here. So Muslim Salikov does look good, right? He's coming off of back-to-back KO victories here in the UFC. But I think Staropoli is also a very, very good striker and could give him a problem. So we've seen him point his way to victory recently because he knows how to play an intelligent game and basically get to the end. I think his defense is there, and I think that he could potentially pick up a win here. It's not my most confident pick of the night. Muslim Salikov does look amazing. He does win on a few different metrics, but overall, I do have Staropoli taking this one. I think it's going to be a bit of an upset here, and I believe that is just going to be his defensive fighting that's going to be able to potentially point his way to victory. Now, all that being said, Salikov is very good about shutting guys down early. He's coming with a second-round KO victory over Ricky Rainey and a first-round win over Nordine Talib back on the Khabib Poirier card. He does have a recent loss, though, in the UFC. He did lose in his opening against Alex Garcia via rear naked choke. And we know that there is a little bit of ground game from Staropoli. He does have 2 submission victories, granted. They haven't come in a while, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get one here. This is a really hesitant pick for me, to be perfectly honest. I've got to go with the guy that does win on most of the store cards here, which is Staropoli, but take this one with a grain of salt. It could definitely be Muslim Salikov. I wouldn't be surprised. However, I am going to ultimately go with Staropoli here. He's our pick. All right, in our next matchup, we have Ashley the Spider Monkey Yoder taking on Ronda Marcos, the Quiet Storm. And this is going to be a pretty decent fight, I think. For a ladies matchup, it's a pretty good one. There aren't too many ladies matchups on the night. In fact, this might be, I think this is, there'd be another one in a debut later on that I don't have crunched with. Loma Lukabume taking on Alexandra Albu. And she's a dime if there ever was one. Albu, check her out. We've got 2 ladies fights on the card, and this one happens to be taking place at strawweight. And so in this contest, it's a tough one to call. There's really not a whole lot of positive outcomes for either one of them. They're set. It's 7-4 for Yoder, 9-7 for Marcos, and both of them just have the 4 submissions as keys to victory, and then everything else being a decision. Obviously, the finish rate is better out of Yoder, but there's more fights under the belt of Marcos. But she's rocking basically a 500 record and hasn't looked too impressive, right? She recently lost to Claudia Gadelha. She was armbarred by Angela Hill, and really. She got Angela Hill in an armbar in a fight that I didn't think she was going to win, but Hill did take a lose there. But we have seen Yoder on the upswing, right? She lost to Angela Hill. She lost to Mackenzie Dern. And then she came back with back-to-back victories against Amanda Bobby Cooper and Suri Kondo. I think that Yoder is on the little upswing here. I think she has the momentum. I think she's the little bit better fighter. These guys, these ladies, do have similar skill sets, but ultimately, I got to go with Yoder here. I think she just edges it out. It is a close one, though. However, we are picking the Spider Monkey to take home the W in Singapore. All right, this is another grain of salt fight. So we have Rafael Fiziev taking on Alex the Spartan White. So in Rafael's first outing, he lost after having nothing but shut the door, very quick stoppages outside of the UFC, right? KO in his outing before he gets into the UFC second round, TKO in the first round, KO in the first, and it just is first round submissions or KOs the entire way. Comes into the UFC, he gets knocked out very early on via Magomed Mustav in the minute, basically 90 seconds into the fight. It's a spinning back kick and punches. He hurts him. So the statistics for Fiziev aren't really there. This is a tough fight to call. Ultimately, I'm picking Alex White. He has more data on him, so obviously he's a richer skill. He has a richer set. But when you look at his wins and losses, it doesn't look like he can take on Fiziev. I think Fiziev just had a bad night. I ultimately am always going to go with the numbers here, but this one doesn't really tell the whole story. I don't think that even though White has more data available, I don't think he's going to take out Fiziev. He just looks too good right now. And much like I was talking about, earlier with some of the other fighters out there that could create an upset over my own picks, I think this is definitely one that is going to happen. I will count it as an L if Alex White ends up losing, but I gotta pick in my heart of hearts Rafael here. Pure numbers pick. You want to trust me on that. I'm gonna go Alex White. He is coming off a win against Dan Murray, and I think that he does look good. It's just Fiziev was looking so amazing coming into the UFC, and he was slightly derailed at that UFC card where Overeem fought Oleinik in Russia, and I think he's going to be able to get back on track. I think he's going to be able to prove why he belongs in the UFC, and I think he's going to be able to pick up a win in his second UFC fight. However, I got to go with the numbers ultimately, though, so we are going to pick Alex White. Just know that this one really splits me down the middle, and I am totally inconclusive about who I would honestly pick in this one if you had to put some money. Which brings me to a sidebar. This is an international card. Beware the gambling. Beware the betting. I should have said that earlier in the show, but if you're still listening at this point, please hold the purse strings tight. Take Cyril Gain if you really want to go with one. Don't take too many chances. Anyways, that's our pick, Alex the Spartan White, in this contest. All right, in our next one, we're going to have Enrique the Strength, or El Fuerte Barzola from Peru, taking on Movsar Evelev. And I got to go with Evelev here. He looks very good. He came into the UFC on that same Overeem Oleinik card, picked up a decision victory. He was looking phenomenal outside of the UFC in M1. He just looked amazing. He has knockouts. He has technical submission ability. He has a good Sambo background, and I think he's going to be enough to take on Barzola. Barzola kind of, he was on a good hot streak for now, but he's a decision-heavy fighter. He's going to try to push it to the end. He gets most of his wins that way. He has very few wins otherwise. He has 4 KOs, 4 submissions, and 8 decisions. So basically right down the middle between stoppages and decisions. And most of those decisions have come in the UFC. The guy hasn't had a really dominant TKO, submission game since he was outside of the UFC many years ago. So I ultimately got to go here with the Russian fighter. I think he just looks really good. I think that he's going to be able to pick up another win here and kind of move along a lot of these Russian fighters. They keep climbing the ranks. I think he's going to be a part of them. He's got a good Sambo game, meaning he's well-rounded everywhere. He's a Russian MMA specialist. We're going to go with Evelev in this contest. In another one at heavyweight, we're going to have Sergey Pavlovich take on Maurice the Crochet Boss Green. Interesting fight name, the Crochet Boss. I mean, I don't hate it. It's interesting. It's a fight name, right? Sergey and Green here are going to have an interesting contest because they both swing heavy, but Pavlovich just looked so nasty coming into the UFC and was derailed by Alistair Overeem. Then he came right back and smashed Marcelo Golm. Is he going to smash Green? Well, Green's never been knocked out, and he's fought guys like Junior Albini got wins, Jeff Hughes got wins, and Michael Batista's got wins. He's looking pretty good. But can he go up against a guy like Pavlovich? I don't think he can. I think Pavlovich is a heavy-hitting striker that maybe, underestimated Overeem, maybe thinking he was too far over the hill. I know I did. I thought Overeem was over the hill myself. And I think if Green thinks anything similar and about Pavlovich, I think he's going to get his face pushed in. Pavlovich has such a great early round TKO record. He has such power, and I think he just got caught against Overeem. I don't think Maurice Green has the same skills. I mean, we look at Overeem, right? The K1 record is the Pride records. Maurice Green has nothing like that. He's 8-2. He's a green fighter. He's going to be a tomato can for Pavlovich. Pavlovich is going to pick up a win here. I'm calling it in Singapore. All right, in our last contest, we have Jeff Lights Out Hughes taking on Rafael Pessoa in what will be another heavyweight matchup. So this one is going to be interesting. We last saw Jeff Hughes in his fight against a returning fighter. So he took on Todd Duffy, who had been out of the sport for a while. He got accidentally poked in the eye, ended up being a no contest. Before that, he lost to Maurice Green and then picked up a win on the Dana White Contender Series. I'm not overwhelmingly impressed with Jeff Hughes' record, but I'm also not that impressed with Rafael either, right? He was on a great streak coming into the UFC, and he got knocked out by Cyril Gain right away, and we saw that Jeff Hughes does hit hard. Does he hit Cyril Gain hard? But he I don't know, but he took a lot of abuse from Todd Duffy, and I think that he's going to be able to take a lot of abuse here from Rafael as well. I think that he is just built like a brick shithouse. He's a strong style MMA guy. He trains with Stipe. He trains with some of the best heavyweight trainers in the world. I think he's going to have what it takes to take him on. Rafael, I believe he's a superior fighter here. We're picking up Jeff Lights Out Hughes to round things out. So let's go over them one more time. We got Stevie Ray, Frank Camacho, Cyril Gain, Laureano Staropoli, Ashley Yoder, Alex White, Mosvar, Ivalov, Sergey Pavlovich, and Jeff Hughes to round out the night. So that brings us to the housekeeping side of things. You can get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with me at MMA Fight Pick 01 on Twitter. And then you know the drill for the rest. Please like and subscribe. Please share. And there's also the Patreon out there as well. We recently just did, and I got to correct myself, we did what I called the McKenna Henry whiskey bourbon review. My friend Kurt, if you've listened to the show, they gifted to me, said that I am pronouncing the name backwards. It is actually Henry McKenna, not McKenna Henry, but small faux pas on my behalf. I'm not going to go back and redo the episode just to flip it around. So I apologize for that if you're listening and think I'm a little dumb for it. And, it's just an honest mistake. It's all. All right. So I will be back with the retrospective, maybe Saturday, possibly Sunday. The fight is taking place, I believe, starting 6 a.m. for the prelims on Saturday Eastern time. So just look out for that one. And then it gets spicy, my friend, because UFC 244 is right around the corner. The BMF title is on the line. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be crunching it maybe ahead of schedule. We'll see. Maybe I'll give a little bit of a taste after we get our results on Saturday. We'll see where things sit. And, I'm just looking really forward to that Diaz-Masvidal fight. I don't know who's going to win if you personally ask me off the top of my head. I have it in the foggiest, so we'll see how that one goes. But until I speak with you again, happy fight picking.